On this show, I mean, probably honestly, even as recently as last week, you've heard me talk about Topps Now. The concept, the branding. I think I'm obviously a fan. If you've heard, if you're a longtime listener, you've obviously heard me talk about it. Two, I think, kind of pieces of important Topps Now related news that have happened late last week and then into this weekend. So the top prospect for Pittsburgh, the top pitching prospect, he made his major league debut in Pittsburgh. Obviously, I think he was either the number 1 or number 2 pick a couple years ago out of LSU. He made his debut, pitched fine, did get his RC, get the RC logo on his Topps Now card. And I went back, because I remember specifically last year, like I said this before, Elly De La Cruz made his debut at the beginning of June. And that's when they switched over from the RC on the Topps Now to the call-up logo on the Topps Now, which basically determines which players are going to be in that year's top products as a rookie, and then who's going to be in next year. Which, I don't know. There's not really a way for... Because with baseball, I don't think there's really a way you can fix that piece of it. I just hope that it is, over the next few years, that they just use like a date. Like, I'm hoping that they do a similar date around there. They're not... looking at who the other top prospects are, like the research that I was doing, I didn't see any other prospects who maybe that stood out to me, at least. I'm sure people who prospect more often probably know of a bunch of people who are going to be making their debuts in the next few weeks. But for me, I didn't really see anybody that stood out. This Pittsburgh pitcher was probably the one that I think a lot of people most recognizable. I guess because he's dating the viral TikTok gymnast from LSU, Livy Dunn. If you're on TikTok and you know who Livy Dunn is, you probably go on it far too much as the way that I do. But that is his girlfriend. So I think she was at the game. I don't really know. I'm glad that they didn't Livy Dunn was one also the first kind of influencer people, or I don't know if it was the first or one of the first influencer people that got a Leaf card, way back in the day, which, like I said, I thought that was a smart idea because she was, going viral. If you know who she is, you know why she was going viral. He makes his debut and he has the RC. Elly De La Cruz last year made it at the beginning of June. So I was looking it up, and I think it was June 6th is the date on Elly De La Cruz's Topps call-up card. So that's where you can expect. I'm expecting first week of June, probably where they're going to be cutting off the players who are going to be included in this year's products. I think he might be in update, because I think the way that they've done it over the past few years is players who are on the Major League roster who maybe weren't expected to, they get or get called up in the first week or two, because I think that they still do the manipulation of the player time. If a player plays a certain amount of games in a year, it then counts for that year of service time. That's what it's called. But if they don't, if they play only half of the season in their first season, it doesn't count, which I don't think that's a good policy, really. I just think it's kind of, you're scamming the players, really. And I think they can go to arbitration, all that stuff. So, later on in their rookie contracts, I mean, Mookie Betts is an example of somebody who went to arbitration every single year, basically, the second half of his career with the Red Sox, before they traded him for nothing, which, whatever. I am bitter about that, but we'll move on. The other piece of Topps Now news is now we have a new record for most Topps Now cards sold within the 24 or 48-hour period. There was a Wembanyama Rookie of the Year card that sold 113,000 copies, which broke the previous record, which was held by Shohei Ohtani at 107. I believe it was the Ohtani Dodgers card that broke the 107, because I don't think it was any type of debut card. Maybe it was. I forget exactly which Ohtani card it was, but either way, now we have a new record. What was going to be the next card to do this? I don't really know. I mean, it probably is going to be some sort of LeBron card for Topps, maybe. That would be the only card that I could see maybe potentially breaking this new record. And I think that this shows how important basketball realistically is going to be for Topps, because it's still a non-licensed card that sold 113,000 copies. The thing is, also a piece of this, I don't know who, like, for it to sell 113,000 copies, that means it would have to go very viral in a pop culture sense, and I don't feel like it did. So it's interesting that it sold so many copies. I definitely think it's a great card. It's a really nice looking card, so I can see why people would buy it. But 113,000 of them were sold. I think probably people wanted autographs and people were looking for the numbered stuff, so that's probably why people were buying so many copies. But like I said, 113,000 is not, obviously it's a new record. It's a significantly high number. So I don't know who the customers of this card really were. Because I think, for example, like, I look back at other cards that were print on demand that were high print runs. The Shore Griffey, I think, is one that obviously comes to mind for a lot of people. During the Topps 2020 project, the first probably 10 cards were really low in print run. And they were selling in like the hundreds, and some of them even the thousands of dollars. Like, I saw a couple that were selling in the thousands, some in the hundreds. I mean, I talked to a couple people who were buying from the very beginning, and they made like tenfold on all the cards that they bought, because they bought them for $20 a piece, and they were selling them for like hundreds of dollars. And like I said, some of them thousands. So when that Shore Griffey card came around, I think people didn't really understand the concept of print on demand, which is why they bought so many of them. I don't think we're in the same spot that we were back then in terms of speculation and cards like that selling, because there's no way that this card one day is going to sell because of how many there are. That's why. I think if this was a card that sold in the thousands, like in the 10,000 maybe, we could see maybe a doubling in price, but the fact that there's 113,000, I really think it's going to be hard for anybody who bought that card. So I'm hoping that no one bought that card with the anticipation of that potentially happening, the way that people were buying the Griffey, the Keith Shore Griffey, which I think that's actually one of my favorite cards, if I'm going to be completely honest, because of the time period and just the popularity. And to be honest, I was following that set, and it felt good to be like sort of looking at something that I was talking about that no one else was really talking about, and then people started to like it. So that was kind of cool back in the day, way back. That was like on TikTok. I think I was posting videos about the cards that were coming out that day, or the cards that had just come out and what the print runs were. So I don't know who. I'm hoping that people weren't anticipating this card was going to go up in value, because selling 113,000 copies, the autographs probably, the numbered cards maybe, but the base cards, they're just not. And I mean, like I said, that Keith Shore Griffey, one other piece of that one was it actually inspired another one of my favorite cards, which Keith Shore actually made a parody of that card in, I think, Project 70. Like, he made a parody of the Shore Griffey card that he originally made. And I was a big fan of that remix of the card. I thought that was really cool. So I'm a super, and that's actually a perfect type of set for non-licensed cards. If I'm going to be honest, like that, I think actually if they are planning like a Project 70 Topps 2020 project style product with football and basketball over the next few years, like, I am stoked for that, because I think that has some huge potential. I mean, especially with Wembanyama having his auto LeBron having his auto with Topps, Curry, KD, and then even having old players. You can get old players in there. I mean, I think it gives artists the ability to make some really cool cards, I think, hopefully, in different ways, and not make them licensed, because, yeah, obviously we still are waiting another year or two for some of these licenses to kick in. So I would say, I hope that we see a project like that. And I guess I don't know when the new year starts. I guess if they were to do it, it probably, unfortunately, wouldn't be with Wembanyama's year. just based on the fact that like the season's almost over. So they probably wouldn't be able to do this whole project over the course of this year, maybe next year. Maybe they do it with the draft potentially. That would be really cool. But at least for now, we are still seeing cards with the RC logo for Wembanyama. I mean, the season's not over, so they technically, obviously that's going to be the reason. Once the draft comes around, that's when I would expect to stop seeing these RCs on the cards. But, a record being broken within sports cards of cards being ordered, I think is a good thing. People will say, oh, it's maybe another Keith Shore-Griffey type situation. Yeah, it might be, but I think overall, when I see news like this, I see it in a positive light because I think people are interested in this type of product and they're learning about something either new for them or new for Topps, and we're going to see probably maybe a few more Wembanyama cards. I would expect we're probably coming to the end of cards they potentially could come out with, because like Rookie of the Year is like, he's not in the playoffs, so it's not like he could really do anything they could do like a rookie team, I guess, but like even that would be maybe a little bit of a stretch since they probably don't have the licenses for some of the other rookies that would be in that set. But we will see these cards come out and you'll see autographs, and I maybe will see the one of one sell for whatever, a couple $100,000. I think that would be really cool, and hopefully somebody gets that ordered the cards through Topps. And because one of the other things that I like and that I don't really like about, and this is maybe a little bit of a, I don't know if this is a secret or whatever, but it's not something I see people talk about. There's people on eBay who pre-order the cards, and you put your order in on eBay, and then they just order however many cards they sold on eBay pre-sale. And then they just take all the color that's in there, and then they either keep that for themselves, or they, probably sell it. But it's just one thing that I've seen people do that I think is kind of interesting that I haven't really seen people talk about. I guess I don't know. Maybe you're not supposed to do it. Maybe that's why I haven't seen people talk about it. But either way, the Wembanyama card broke the record, and we are still getting RCs on Topps Now debut cards. Obviously, if you listen to this podcast or you follow into my other content, you know that I am very interested in just like sports card marketing, because I think we're in such an interesting industry where the marketing is pretty much done by consumers, and which is one of the reasons, if I'm going to be honest, why I think that sports card companies need to take the quality of their products, I think, a little bit more seriously. I think, sure, they probably have quality control departments at their companies, but I think if you look at over the past few years, the quality, I guess it's not necessarily that the quality has gone down, it's that the production has increased, which has shown flaws in the quality of the products. But for Panini, you maybe could say that the quality has gone down a little bit, in my opinion. I think that there's always been people complaining about cards online. There's always been people complaining about the quality of products. But sports card marketing in general, the card companies, I really would wonder, I don't even know how you could put a number on how much money they really have saved by not having to market their products at all. You might look at it also and say, well, and I think sports card products versus what I'm about to compare, I obviously know that they're two completely different things. Like, you don't see commercials for like Ferraris or Lamborghinis because they're they market towards customers that they know are going to buy them, which is why you don't see those commercials for those car companies, because they're not going to put together commercials because they know that anybody who's watching a commercial, realistically, they're probably not going to be buying one of those cars. If I'm just going to be flat out and say it, like $1 million on a car, the chances are the target market is probably not sitting there watching commercials, which also, just in general, I think that we're going to see a big shift in marketing and just overall in the whole landscape over the next few years when we get maybe executives who aren't in their 60s and 70s who are retiring. I think the next generation of CEOs and people who are marketing executives, At least I hope so. I mean, or maybe it's going to take another generation or two potentially. I'm not 100% sure, but I think we're going to see at some point a big shift when it comes to how marketing dollars are being distributed, because there's two pieces here that I think don't really add up, in my opinion. Views being a gauge of whether a product sells. I don't think that gauge doesn't really work, in my opinion. And then also the ad dollars that people get from just putting out YouTube videos and just putting out content in general, I don't think that money that the company is spending in those areas is actually equivalent to what they think it's going to, what the return on their investment would be. And sports cards, so the comparison of the sports cars versus the sports cards, I think you don't really see commercials. I mean, we've recently started seeing more and more commercials about sports cards, but the amount of what's the term I'm looking for? The amount of views and impressions and just eyeballs that sports cards gets on a daily basis from their consumers, just talking about the products, talking about anything, posting their cards on Instagram, and that's not to talk about. That's not even just. That's kind of just talking about regular people who are posting their cards, because I think the people who are regular people just posting their cards, they're giving a lot of free marketing. The people talking about, the content creators talking about cards, they're also giving a similar amount of free marketing, maybe at like not as wide of a net, but like a singular person probably has a little bit more reach than maybe 100 people who are just posting their cards on social media. But the amount of impressions and dollars that sports card companies have saved on just people posting their cards is astronomical. It's really insane. So when you see companies running campaigns, which is really something fairly new, in my opinion, or at least something that I would consider new. I'm sure you could point to a campaign here, a campaign there over the last couple of years, but we really have seen like with Tom Brady, where they did the Tom Brady campaign. They did sort of a LeBron campaign. It was more of like a mini campaign. I think they were it seemed like that was kind of thrown together last minute, in my opinion. I think maybe they were waiting on a signature from LeBron to say, yeah, we're going to do this. So maybe that's why they waited. But the newest campaign that I really like is, then also I will talk about what I like, and then also talk about this. We're getting players more involved in cards as well. And I think that's important because, that's a funnel that is going to be way larger, but also have people who are probably more engaged in what's trying to be sold to them. Because that's just what marketing is, really. Like, if we're looking at it, it's a company trying to sell you something. And I think the shift is going to come when people are going to look at the number of dollars and they're going to say, well, the number of views and the number of dollars are not going to equal each other. And like I said, I don't know if it's going to be this next generation or the generation after that, but there's going to be marketing executives who you aren't going to be able to just tell them large numbers and like on views or whatever it ends up being. But so the marketing campaign that goes with the players getting involved that I'm going to talk about here that I really like is they had Bobby Witt and Corbin Carroll. They had them put cards in their pockets while they were playing. And I actually am not 100%. Like, I saw the campaign I saw was through PSA. PSA Fanatics, they're kind of all partnering together in a way here. But so then PSA put out this campaign with these cards. And I just think it was a cool, it was a cool marketing campaign that PSA and Fanatics put together. And they are very lucky, in my opinion, that they have these types of players on their payroll, because that's what they are. This is a sponsorship for them. They're very lucky that, and also two of those players who, were the star rookies of their year, and that is recent. That's a very recent thing. Like, that's, Bobby Witt, I think, was a rookie in 2022, and then Corbin Carroll was like the big rookie. Was a big rookie last year. And so they put the cards in their pockets as they were playing the game, and then they signed them, sent them to PSA. Like I said, a very cool marketing campaign that I think works because you have players who actually are into cards, which this campaign wouldn't work if it was like, or I mean work, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a cool campaign either way, but I would like it less if they did it with some random players. Like if they did it, I don't know, I can't think of any players necessarily off the top of my head, but the fact that they did it with players, Bobby Witt, I think, has worked with PSA on multiple different videos where he gets his cards graded, he does a PSA reveal, and also then this led to, it was also an article that was written in The Athletic. Now, I think it's interesting that they're in a way kind of promoting non-PSA 10 cards that maybe they're good, I guess. I mean, that was what was part of, like, when PSA was tweeting about it. They said, what if the Grail was not actually a PSA 10, but rather a dirtier, wrinkled PSA 1, complete with a one-of-a-kind, game-worn distinction and custom inscription? Yeah, obviously that would be very cool. I think it's, you're not really necessarily, unless they're going to put these cards into products potentially, you're not really going to sell them, I guess, or maybe they will sell them eventually. I don't really know for sure what they're going to do with them. But it was a cool, just in general, campaign that PSA did with some players who they like cards. So that definitely helps. And I mean, again, like, I think that the marketing dollars are going to, at least I hope they do, move in directions where, you're getting maybe smaller audiences that are being paid money, but they're more engaged audiences. Because I think the one thing that, Twitter was doing this for a while too. They were doing some ad campaign stuff where they were paying out creators, which, that was all a sham, basically. Like, they paid a bunch of big creators a ton of money, and then, like, after, like, a couple times, the money just kept getting smaller and smaller. And, I mean, that's one of the, I don't know. I guess it's an issue that I have within marketing in general, and not really necessarily within sports cards, but just, the sports cards I think do fall into this category, because I think that there are content creators, there are people who create content that are purposely trying to get people upset, because that gets people views. And look, if that's your business model and that's how you want to do it, that's fine. Whatever. That's up to you. That's not how I would necessarily want to do it. If I don't know, I've done one video, and you've heard me talk about this. It was like which I don't even think it was that crazy of a take. It was like saying something about the gold or the black label BGS 10 card shouldn't be worth what it's worth, or something like that. I mean, I kind of made it in jest and kind of made it purposely a little bit antagonistic, and the comments were just horrible. I was just like, I don't like this at all. Like, again, I want to make content about stuff that I like, but criticize stuff that I don't like, but not in a way where I'm choosing to criticize something that I know other people either like or that other people don't like. I want to put my own spin on these types of things. So, cool campaigns. I'm glad that, we're seeing this type of stuff with players in the league who are playing, who are big rookies that are working with these sports card companies, because I think that's another big change we're going to see within sports cards over the next few years, is players getting more involved, because not only are they going to, there's going to be initiatives for more players to get involved from the companies. I think that younger players are more in tune with what's going on within cards, because they see what's going on social media, because these, younger players most likely are using social media probably a little bit more, I guess, potentially, than older veteran players. So they're seeing what's going on with cards. So they're hopefully going to want to get involved. I mean, that's kind of I hope that they do want to get involved here, because, again, it's just going to give more opportunities for creators, for collectors, to give them experiences and give them things that, if they weren't into sports cards, then it wouldn't be an opportunity that these people would have. So it seems that now we're pretty much officially on Bronny Watch, I guess, because it was announced in the past few days that he was going to be, this was in the way that, it's weird to me, sorry. It was announced that he is going to be staying in the NBA draft, which, the way that it was worded, I don't know, maybe that's just me, and maybe that's just me being, weird and not seeing things that are worded like that and being like, well, that's kind of weird. But the other funny part about this coverage, to be honest, is we're starting to now also see that people are saying that the draft class is going to be bad. And this is why I'm saying that we're on Bronny watch right now. Which Bronny and then LeBron watch, which I bet you're going to see over the next few months, like as the playoffs progress. I almost guarantee that there's going to be mainstream, maybe ESPN potentially, is going to come out, and they're going to start talking about how, Bronny should go number one, because if you get this was the whole plan from the beginning, realistically, like at least from, and then when he got hurt last year, maybe his draft stock dropped a little bit, but it's like, whatever team drafts Bronny, LeBron is a free agent, and he said that he's going to go there potentially. So, where I think this is going to be interesting for Topps, unfortunately, is that means Panini is going to get another year of Prism with potentially Bronny James. Bronny James could have his Prism rookie, or his rookie card would be a Prism card, and it wouldn't be a Topps Chrome card. There probably will be some sort of Topps Chrome card that comes out with him. Or wait, no, because it would be 20... No, yeah, it would be. It could have potentially been a Topps Chrome card if he had waited another year, because this upcoming season they announced, like I said, they're going to be coming out in October, I think it was. They're going to be coming out with Topps basketball products with this past rookie class, which could potentially include Bronny. I don't know. I mean, this gets into also a conversation of where, like for the NBA at least, should they expand the players that are getting cards? Maybe not. Potentially not, I think. Because with, you can put every single player from every single NBA team on a card at the beginning of the season. You can do whatever the opening day roster is. With some, but, and obviously putting the rookies in, even if some of the rookies are still playing in the G League. But like I said, what this means is that Bronny is, he's going to go to, I don't know, Atlanta, which the other crazy thing that I don't know, I did see a graphic about it, so I'm not going to say no one is talking about it, but they showed, like, if the worst team got the number one pick in a bunch of drafts over the last, 5 years, like, Wembanyama would have gone to the Pistons, Zion would have gone to the Knicks, which that is... The Knicks having the worst record in the league and then not getting Zion is potentially the funniest story of the decade, I think. And then it was Anthony Edwards, I think, went to the Warriors, which that's kind of that's really crazy to think. Like, imagine Anthony Edwards playing with Steph Curry. I mean, that would actually be insane, because now I think you are prolonging their career a little bit, like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson. Obviously, they're going to be signing. If you've got Karl Anthony Towns, which I think that potentially means that Karl Anthony Towns would have been on the championship team. So at this point, Karl Anthony Towns would already have a championship as well, which, again, that's just, adding to the crazy status that he's already seen so far in his career. And then there was just, I think it was Caden Clark. No, not Caden Clark. It was two other players that when the Rockets had the worst, the worst record, they would have had the first pick too, and they didn't, which I don't get it. The NBA lottery, I think, is really strange, and I'm surprised that there aren't people talking about how it's could be rigged. Like, it just doesn't seem like reality. It doesn't seem realistic. But either way, so Atlanta this year, they didn't have the worst record. The Pistons had the worst record. They lost. They had a record losing streak, and they got the fifth seed. They got the fifth seed in, like I said, I just started seeing people talking about the draft and saying it's one of the worst draft classes that we've ever seen. Like, basically they're saying that, the top player in a regular draft, not even a good draft, in a regular draft, the number one player that could be picked this year, if it's not Bronny, would have been, the 10th pick in, a regular draft, a decent draft. So you have to think if the draft is bad, and I think this is also I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if this is a narrative that maybe LeBron potentially would want, because then it's well, sure, you could draft one of these players, and they could be good, they could be bad, or you could draft Bronny, and you're also maybe potentially getting LeBron. Like that, I would almost... I don't know. I mean, the Bronny and LeBron to Atlanta, people have already said that, but I don't know. That's maybe my prediction. And for cards, we are still waiting on the licenses, so that's not really going to be affected. Like, whatever teams they're on, they're going to have dual autos, but they're probably going to have some sort of dual auto with a cropped version of it, the same way that they did with the Steph Curry, because I believe in that same season, the Steph Curry year, Topps made basketball and the cards didn't have the logos, I believe, because I know Steph Curry's rookie and all the rookies didn't. They were like basically headshots of the players, which I think are fine. Like, I think actually an interesting way to, no, I don't know, I was going to say an interesting way to kind of start this class would be to recreate the 2009 cards, but there's not really a reason to. There's not like an anniversary. They may do them as inserts potentially. I could see them doing that. But I don't. Yeah, I was again. You've heard this show before. You understand how it works. I say things and then immediately I'm like, well, I don't know. Maybe that actually wouldn't work. So I don't think that would work. But I think you're gonna get Bronny autos. I mean, he signed the exclusive with Topps as well. When back in, I don't remember how long ago, probably not even 2 years ago at this point, which is pretty insane. 2 years ago at this point, we had Bronny announced that Topps announced at the industry conference that he signed an exclusive, which that was, obviously that was to get LeBron, and that's what ended up happening. So, that wasn't super surprising to me. I think that was what a lot of people were saying, so I'm not even going to sit here and be like, oh, I was the only person that predicted it, because I think there was a lot of people that were saying that was the ultimate goal, especially when they signed the player, the person who, like, player relations, the head of player relations for basketball at Fanatics is somebody from Rich Paul's agency, which is also LeBron's agency. So that's another way to get LeBron there. But we're going to see potentially a Bronny LeBron card with the same uniforms. Like that, I just think it would be, I don't know. I think LeBron, I'd love to sit here and say that he's past his prime, obviously he's past his prime, but that he's past the point of even like, that he should just be retiring this year and that it's not even worth him playing another year. But for sports card people, I think that's good, because we're going to get Topps LeBron cards, and we'll also get Panini LeBron cards. But now that I'm thinking about it, I think for a while, well, maybe it was because he had the exclusive, actually. That's probably it. When LeBron had that exclusive with Upper Deck, that was really the only reason why. That was the reason why that he didn't have any autos in Panini products. But then also, it was the reason why after he retired, we probably weren't going to be getting any more Panini LeBron cards, the same way we don't get any Panini Jordan cards. But now that he has the exclusive with Fanatics, I would imagine we will be getting LeBron cards for a while after he retires. I would imagine that would be the case. And wherever Bronny goes, I would imagine that's where LeBron will end up going. I think he's probably going to opt out of that Lakers contract. I mean, just based on his career of what he's done, he's made the right move basically for him every single time. He doesn't care what team he's leaving behind or who he's signing with. I mean, just look at the decision. Look at when he left Miami, going back to Cleveland. Look at when he left Cleveland and then he went to the Lakers. He's made what I think is the best business decision for him throughout his career pretty consistently. And I think that means he's probably going to play with his son, because I think that's a good business decision. Whether he plays well or not at that new team, I think is to be determined. I think this year the Lakers barely made the playoffs, and they had a decent team. Like, that's kind of the other interesting thing about that team is, like, they were fine. They were pretty good. So, I think we're going to see Bronny, maybe even Bryce. Yeah, I'm just kidding, because Bryce is not. I think Bryce is still in high school, I'm pretty sure. So I think he's a junior maybe this year. So that's LeBron's son. So once Bryce gets to the league, if he does, which from what I've heard, Bryce is actually better than Bronny. So there's a potential that we're going to see a triple auto with all of the sons. I mean, I don't know if that's got to have happened in the past, probably, but in this new era of sports cards, I don't think something like that has ever happened. We've seen, obviously, the LeBron triple logo man, which is if that card had an auto, that would probably be the best card of all time, I think, because it had the patch from all of the different teams. If it had an auto, it probably would be the best card. And I don't know, I don't think LeBron will still be in the league when Bryce gets there, but a triple auto with Bryce, Bronny, and LeBron, I think has potential to be one of the bigger cards within the sports card industry, maybe that we've ever seen, but definitely better than that triple logo man, and definitely one of the best cards in the modern era. You may have seen the news that GameStop they're doing sports card trading. Now, if you have ever been to a GameStop and tried to trade in anything, I think they're widely known as, like, ripping people off and giving them, like, pennies on the dollar when it comes to anything game related. I mean, if it's a previous year's game, you'd be lucky if you get $10, really. So I don't know. I'm wondering how this is going to go with cards. I think it's interesting that a company, I guess, like GameStop is, like, they're going to buy and sell cards, but they're not like a card store. So, like, hypothetically, people would go in there and you'd be able to buy cards. I don't know, maybe they're going to set up card cases. Like, I mean, I feel like from the looks of it, it looks like a lot of them, or from the looks of, like, press releases and stuff that I've seen, they're expecting a lot of like TCG. I don't know if they're necessarily expecting sports cards. You know, this, and I don't know. I don't think this is going to go well, if I'm going to be completely honest, just based on the fact that, like, GameStop has widely been considered, like, widely, if you go in there, they just don't give you the correct amount of money. So it's like, why would you want to go in there and, you know, like, sell your cards to GameStop? Like, I guess it's a quick way to, if you have a bunch of cards, I'm sure that they'll give you the cash for it, but I mean, I can't imagine they're giving you more than, like, 50% of your value. Like, it just doesn't, and I think it's just graded cards too, also. That was part of the other press release that I saw. But yeah, I can't imagine they're going to be giving you close to what you could try and selling the cards on eBay, I guess. And I guess it makes me a little bit, one thing that makes me a little bit nervous is that you're going to have people who don't really know the value of the cards and who are going to be buying them. Like, you know, there are, like, shoe stores where you can go and you can buy and sell limited edition sneakers, but it's like those people in the stores know, like, they know for the most part, like, the values of a lot of these sneakers. So, like, you're not, like, if you're going into a GameStop, you're not going and you're not running into somebody who, like, has a history of selling cards. So I mean, I hope that they can figure it out, I guess, just because I want the experiences that people have within cards to be good. And if they can figure it out and they give customers good experiences, then that's a positive for cards. It's just they have widely been known as the company that doesn't give you good prices on when you're trading stuff. And I understand that a sports card, and if you're trying to trade in, like, Madden 2023 and it's Madden 2024 is out, you know, or even just used games, they're not even giving you the full value of used games. Like, you spend $60 on a game, and this is obviously where sports cards and games are going to be different, because, you know, you're not the $60 you spend on a game, immediately, as soon as you open that up, it's not worth $60 anymore. It's whatever GameStop will give you the money. Well, it's whatever GameStop will give you for that game. Now, a sports card that's graded is obviously going to be somewhat of a different scenario. You know, you're not you're not buying something for $60 that is losing value immediately. If you're, buying cards, you kind of hope that you're buying them. If you're buying them for $60, you would hope that maybe one day you'll be able to sell them for more than the $60 that you paid for it. I'd say nowadays those types of cards are a little bit harder to come by if you're not doing all of the research that you can. So it's interesting, and this is just another thing that's like a corporate, and this is another reason why I maybe potentially think that it's not going to work, is like a corporate company that has not really been involved in cards. Like, you can buy packs and stuff, I think, at GameStops. Most GameStops are, or bigger ones at least, you can buy packs of cards, but you're getting a company that isn't in the business of sports cards trying to get involved in sports cards. And they're going to try and make money also. Like, this is sort of the other piece of it. It's like, they're not going to offer you what you realistically could sell the cards for. And it's actually same kind of with a card store, or it's same if you are going to like a show or something. The people buy the cards. They're also looking to make money from selling the cards. So it's a very strange scenario, in my opinion, because everybody is trying to make money in some way. If you're in the transaction of a card, whether you are buying or you are selling, everybody within that transaction is trying to make money. So maybe this will just be another place where people will be able to get cash for cards easy. There probably are more GameStops around than there are card shops. So if GameStop wants to get involved here, like, there's obviously going to be more of them than there are card shops, like I just said. So like I said, I hope that it goes well. I hope that what they're trying to do ends up panning out, because if they're screwing over customers and they're really lowballing people, you're going to have two things. It's one thing is that it's just not going to last. You're not going to be like, they're just not going to do it for long, because if it's a corporate company, they're on the stock exchange. They had that crazy thing with people making the price of the stock go up, and it's actually kind of something similar is happening right now. So it's interesting that these things are all kind of happening at the same time. But so you're not going to have customers that want to go into your store to buy and sell them if you're not giving them at least a decent amount of value, I think. And then the other piece of that is, like, if you have people who don't really know about cards, that they just have them, and you have GameStop who, I don't know if they're negotiating prices, like, are they going to say, hey, I want $50 for this card? If somebody walks in, they say, hey, this card's worth $50, look on eBay, here it is. If they say, no, we'll give you $30 for it, that's, and then if the person needs the money or they need it, they'll do it, because, if they, like I said, if they need the money, they'll do it. But, like, they're also, it's also hurting a customer, someone within sports cards, not just, like, that's sort of the interesting thing about when there's issues within cards, is that it's not just that there's issues within cards and everything in general. There are people on the other end of these transactions that are not getting the full value that they should be getting. And it's not the same exact thing, but it's when people are complaining on social media or they're tweeting at companies and they're yelling at them, it's like, sure, realistically, the person should know that the person on the other end should know that they're obviously not talking about them. But if you've ever worked in marketing, you've worked in social media, you know that's just not the case, because, like, the person whose job it is to monitor social media, they're going to do it, and all they're going to get is that negative stuff. All they're going to get are those negative comments. And sure, you could compartmentalize that these comments are not about me, they're about the company. But as humans, it's like, I don't know, that's not really how our brains work. I think, at least. So yeah, like I said, you are going to have customers that maybe potentially you're going to have bad experiences, and that may lead them out of sports cards. And it's the same thing with anything in general. I mean, with Topps or Panini, if there's a customer that has a bad experience, you're going to run into a scenario where it's like they may just leave sports cards all together if they don't have the experience that they think lives up to lives up to the potential that I think they could have. I don't know if that exactly makes sense. The experience that someone could have within sports cards is going to be negatively impacted because a company that doesn't know what they're doing is trying to be involved in the industry. And sure, if they have people who are going to be the sports card person of the company, or the sports card person of, or just cards in general, maybe not, because it's also trading cards, the card person of the GameStop, you're just going to find that, that's not going to be the case, I don't think. Hopefully they do something like that, because it's not like, and I'm sure, I don't know, maybe they're probably partnering, like I think I saw the partnership is with PSA, somewhat. So they're probably going to use Collectible not Collectible, sorry. The Collectible, the company, and PSA. They're probably going to use like Card Ladder to look up prices. But then what are they doing after that? What are they actually offering people is, I think, the big question that I'll be trying to get answers to, I guess, as we get farther along in this partnership. Because like I said, if they don't have experts, or they don't have someone that knows what they're doing, they're going to hurt their customers. And not even just the fact that people already know that GameStop kind of rips people off when it comes to their video games. If they're adding a piece of their business that in theory could add value, if they don't have somebody that knows what they're doing. So some of the early data has come in about the kabooms from this year. It was actually one of the cards I did see a lot of people talking about the quality being pretty low on, that case hit, which it's one of the more popular case hits, which I don't know. I'm starting to sour on the concept of a case hit, if I'm going to be honest, because I don't know. It's just, you can get them in anything, so it's like, what's the point of calling something a case hit if it's like something you can just pull out of a retail box? And I understand retail boxes come in cases, and on average, you're going to get one of the kabooms per case. I think that's how it works. I mean, with the case sets, I know that they call it a case set. I'm not sure if they fully acknowledge that it's as rare as it is. But so far, around 40 of the cards have been graded, and only or none of them have gotten higher than a PSA 8. So from what I've seen, and from what I've seen people talking about, the centering on this card, or the centering on a lot of the versions, is like really the piece here that's hurting the grades of these cards. And I think it gets into, there's two kind of things here that I'm thinking about with this card and just modern grading in general. And I'm sure you've heard me talk about this. Is one, I feel like they need to grade modern cards harder. And I think I've talked about this, where I think that they can't really retroactively be grading cards harder, but they need to grade the cards that are 1 year. They need to say, this is the year where the grades are going to be harder. And I understand saying that means that you're affecting the market, you're affecting a lot of things by giving cards harder grades and making PSA 10s harder to get, and doing it actively. I think, maybe PSA looks at it and says, well, we don't want to affect the market, so we're just going to grade the card how we see fit. And this card, I mean, sure, it's probably, other than that centering, the centering is the main issue, at least from, I've seen multiple people talking about this online, where they said, like, even the, like, 1 of 1, I believe, was pulled for the Wembanyama, and the 1 of 1 looks very off-centered. I think it was the 1 of 1, I'm pretty sure. I know it was green, but the centering is really the big issue here. And I think the other conversation is that I just don't know in general if there should be so many, if they should be grading PSA 10s at the rate that they are. I think that they should have decided to start grading modern cards on a different scale a long time ago. Probably, I don't know when you do, like maybe, I don't know, I guess 2020, like I don't know exactly when you would, if in the past they had done this, when you would have retroactively in the terms of like doing this back in the day and starting in that year, not starting to grade cards harder. I don't know when exactly you would have changed the standards, but I don't know. I feel like there's something different when it comes to, like, when you see a vintage card that's either a PSA 10 or a PSA 9, it just feels like it's held in a much higher pristine, obviously, because the numbers of them are going to be much lower compared to modern stuff. I mean, with Luka, for example, there's, I don't know, I mean, it's crazy how many PSA 10s there are of him, like him and Zion and all of that, like the 2020 crew that were those top players, the most popular players back then. They just have an astronomical amount of PSA 10s, which, again, these are all concepts and things that I keep thinking about, is like how many of these cards are even like how many cards haven't been graded? This is kind of a conversation that I've had for a while, thinking about like the Jordan Fleer cards, or like I mean, even the Zion or Luka Prism cards, like, how many of those cards actually exist versus how many are being graded? And we'll never know, because they're never going to come out with print runs. I mean, maybe... No, I think at this point they probably will never come out with the print runs. I think in the future they may try and do... they may come out with print runs for cards in the future, but not in the past, because I really do think that if they were to come out with that number, it would affect the cards. It would affect cards in a way where I don't know necessarily if it would be positive or negative, because I think that the number is known. The number's not known, but it's like estimated. And if the estimations are higher than what people even thought, then that's going to hurt values pretty significantly. But with grading in general, and it's not even the fact that, if I'm going to be honest, that I think it should be harder to get a PSA 10, because I just don't think, like, PSA 10s are, well, the perfect grade for a card. I just don't see that as a concept that should exist, because of the amount of hands and the amount of movement that has to go from the card being produced on the machine to graded. Because once it's graded, there's no more speculation on there's no more speculation on the quality of the card, or like what the condition of the card, sorry. Because, you know, like I've said in the past, you get the card gets produced, it gets put into a pack gets put in the box gets put in the case, case gets shipped out one place, another place, then it gets put into the hobby shop, gets opened. You know, sometimes it's sold as a box, sometimes it's opened as a box at the shop. Person opens, whoever the customer of the product ends up being. It's just, like I said, there's just too many steps, in my opinion, for this many cards to get a perfect score. Which I think that's also maybe a misconception. People assume that if a card gets a PSA 10, that it's a perfect condition card, which that's been proven not to be true, just based on the fact that PSA, their centering standards are, they're not the best. It's not that they're not the best. They're just, they vary. Like, not every grader is going to grade the card the same. And this, I don't know. This, again, gets into the conversation of, like, well, do we need AI grading, or do we need, like, robotic grading, or what do we need for grading to make it better? I don't really, and I don't think there's necessarily anything that can make grading better. I just do think that they need to, which, maybe they did do this year. And maybe they said, well, this year's going to be the year that we grade cards a little bit differently. Because, just like we said, the quality of cards nowadays, the production of them, is just so much higher. It's so much better that so many cards getting PSA 10s, because of PSA's grading standards, these cards are PSA 10s, but I think based on, like, how I think cards should be graded, they aren't necessarily. I think that a card that was from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s that was sent into PSA in the 90s, or even sent into PSA, like, because also that's the one thing, grading hasn't been around for forever. So I wonder if, for example, like the Gretzky O-Pee-Chee, there's only like 2 PSA 10s for the O-Pee-Chee, and then there's like 2 PSA 10s for the tops. But if grading was as prevalent now, or if grading was as prevalent back then as it is now, I wonder if there would be as many high graded cards, or as many just graded cards in general, for those specific players. And Gretzky is just an example. I think any of the players that were rookies from, the late 70s into probably the late 80s, probably like Jordan's year, I would say, is probably the last year I would say that I would categorize this. But, like, if grading was around back then, would the grades look more similar than they do now? And I do a lot of hypotheticals on this show, but that's one that I think, I don't know, I'm not sure. I'm wondering if because the card itself, because the cards now are such good quality that's why you're seeing so many more people send in cards, because the cards, they look at them and they say, well, this could get a PSA 10. Maybe back then the cards, people wouldn't look at them and say, because of the way that they were either cut or the way that they were produced, maybe people wouldn't get cards graded at the same rate because of the quality. Now, like I said, these are always all obviously hypotheticals, and we'll never know. But I think we're gonna, at least I hope we see at least a little bit of a change in future products for whatever it is, whichever year, whether it's Topps or Panini, that give people, making PSA 10s, I think, a little bit more rare would be, I think it would be a good idea, but at the same time, I don't know. It is one of the reasons why PSA is so popular, is because, like, you can send in, like, 15, 20 cards of the same card, and, like, most likely if it's a modern card, half of them are going to come back a PSA 10. So people want their cards to be a PSA 10. This is kind of also the cycle of grading. It's like, we want our cards to be PSA 10s, but we also want the population to be down, but we want our cards to be the good ones. It's really an interesting conundrum there with, like, grading and stuff. Because most likely you're going to get those PSA 10s, and because and I think it's a good thing, because it helps cut it, like, it's talking about what happened on yesterday's podcast with, like, customers having good experiences. But at the same time, the more PSA 10s, the lower the value of that PSA 10 then becomes.